The Marine Resources Defence Association was founded by divers who witnessed the collapse of marine resources. Undersea ecosystems, which previously supported an abundance of species, have quickly become devoid of life. Besides many species, we are taking care of the Atlantic salmon, which inhabit the rivers of the Pyrenees, the Adour, Nive, Saison, Gave de Lorient and Gave de Pau. Our concerns are based upon genuine and legitimate information. ADRM has scrutinised reports of observations taken at sea and which, for reasons known only to themselves, have never been published by the French authorities. In June and July, 16 fishing trips undertaken by 3 vessels from Cap Breton had observers on board. The bycatches of salmonoids occur only with coastal gill nets close to the shore like these. It was noted that on average, more than 3 salmonids per vessel per trip were caught exclusively in gill nets. This equates to 132 salmonids for each of the 10 vessels of Cap Breton which are involved in this fishery. This is exactly what the fishermen told the authorities, 150 fish per vessel, in a confidential letter which was supported by photographs and video. They requested permission to allow them to sell the fish caught in the nets. No authorization was issued by the authorities. A year later, and following pressure from estuarine Driftnet fishermen, the chairman of the Regional Fisheries Commission was forced to confirm the extent of these bycatches at an official meeting. The figures quoted do not give an accurate estimate of the catches of salmon. As a matter of fact, there are at least 33 vessels fishing the coastal area of Bayonne. This indicates the total of salmon landed likely to be in the region of 4,000. Even this is a very conservative estimate, as May and August are equally as favourable as June and July for netting salmon. Additional consideration also needs to be given to the number of salmon caught as bycatch in trawlers and purse seines. Large, valuable females are being caught in the winter. An example is this 8+ kilo fish taken in February 2019. Thus, it is considered that the percentage of salmon being taken is close to or even greater than the 66% of the whole stock. The scale of these bycatches at sea should not come as a surprise. Geography shows the Adour to be a river that has shifted its bed many times over a period of millions of years before arriving at the coast, at many different locations along 100 kilometres of the Aquitaine coast. The salmon had to work hard to find their branch of this river. Additionally, scientists have confirmed that migratory salmon tend to swim in less than 5 metres of water. This can be even more shallow at night. The gill nets that are being used take up the whole water column from seabed to the surface. This method of fishing is horrendously efficient at catching salmon. More and more nets appear to be set each year, increasing their concentration in this area. In 2011, Ifremer estimated that each of the 33 vessels fishing this area set on average 10 to 12 kilometres of net on a daily basis. This equates to more than 360 kilometres set along a coastline of 120 kilometres, or 3 kilometres of nets for every 1 kilometre of coast. Given these circumstances, it becomes almost impossible for salmon, sea trout and shad to find their own particular spawning grounds. These fish have the hopeless task of having to navigate hundreds of kilometres of gill nets in order to find their home. By allowing more and more gill nets in a narrow coastal strip of 2 nautical miles, the authorities know full well that very large numbers of migratory salmon are being killed. The authorities seem unperturbed by the slaughter, simply stating that salmon, the majority of which are dead, need to be discarded at sea. Given this information, it seems inexplicable that the French authorities have told NASCO that Pyrenean salmon stock could be threatened. They claim that little is known of the extent of salmon bycatch and that more information is needed. In making this claim, they are ignoring the at-sea observations which are outlined above, but which have never been published. Sadly, this is not the only way in which NASCO is being misled. Number 1, commercial catches in the rivers are not being reported. Number 2, the commercial catches in the estuaries are massively understated. In 2015, it was claimed that 880 kilos were landed, whereas the commercial fishermen reported 1,396 salmon for a combined weight of 5,669 kilos, an increase of well over 600% on the reported figure. Number 3, bycatch of salmon at sea are not reported. Number 4, it is claimed that recreational fishery is responsible for nearly all mortality. These inaccurate reports violate Article 15 of the International Convention. 3. Each party shall provide the Council with any other available scientific and statistical information which it requires for the purposes of this Convention. Each year, each party shall notify the Council of c. factors within its territory and area of fisheries jurisdiction which may significantly affect the abundance of salmon stocks subject to this Convention. The notifications referred to in paragraph 5, B and C shall be sent to the Secretary as soon as practical. NASCO was not fooled by the bad faith of this Sibyllin French report, devoid of comments. Very little information on progress in delivering actions to protect and restore stocks, since it denounces actions that have not yet commenced. Notes the non-declaration of incidental catches while the French administration is able to quantify the fish released by anglers, and warns, for the evaluation process to work effectively and to be fair and equitable, the review group will require more detailed reporting on progress against each action in the 2018 APR. NASCO seems at loss to explain the disappearance of salmon from our waters. However, anglers and divers see these fish being killed on a regular basis and in close proximity to our coasts. Under these conditions, the conservation limits established in 1999 have never been reached and will never be reached. The quantities of eggs deposited, here in orange, do not reach half the threshold that had to be reached in the year 2000, in green. Since then, this minimum threshold has necessarily increased considerably due to the recent release of dozens of hectares of spawning grounds. The stock can collapse from one season to the next. Finally, France is failing for a number of reasons. The coastal Gillnet fishery is actually a mixed fishery that captures half of the salmon stock that should return to the Adour and other rivers, the Nivelle, Bidasoa and northern Spanish rivers including the Asturias. The Driftnet fishery in the Adour estuary is a targeted fishery that falls in a watershed well below its conservation limits, which violates the precautionary principle and recommendations of NASCO. Both fisheries are not subject to any restrictions in the perimeter of the Natura 2000 local areas, designated to protect diadromous fish. Shad are also concerned, along with the Atlantic salmon, by Annex 2 of the 1992 Habitats Directive, which is not respected. On Irish Driftnet fishery in 2007, the ADRM calls for legal action against France. It was the Ambassador of France who organised a meeting in the Dublin Embassy in 2006, along with all the ambassadors of countries hosting North Atlantic salmon, which helped NASF, Aurea Vigfusson and the French Sapanso Association to convince the Irish government to impose an immediate ban. ADRM is suggesting that NASCO prohibits any gillnet capable of catching salmon being set within 2 nautical miles of the coast. A depth contour may be another option. In the southwest of France, MRDA recommends that legislation is introduced to ban gillnets and introduce a safe net-free zone, which will not only help salmon but all other marine species. Similar fishery management tools have already been used successfully in many other areas of the world and for many years. Surely it is time that similar measures were introduced in France.